Hi everyone, welcome to the Monkey Patching Podcast, where we go bananas about all things AI for good, enemies, and more. My name is Murillo, joined as always by my great co-host Bart.
Hi, Murillo.
How are you doing, Bart?
I'm doing good.
Crazy week, huh? It's been a lot of news, I feel.
There's been a lot of AI and data news last week, yeah. It's been hard to follow everything.
Had to make some editorial
Models,
decisions.
browsers, regulations,
Yeah,
a lot of different things.
Rug pulls, yeah, a lot of stuff. So let's get started. Lots to cover. MCP proposes USB-C for AI, letting agents call site functions instead of clumsy click automation. And I quote, MCP-b gives AI direct access to your website's functionalities instead, promising a smoother bot web handshakes for everyone.
Yes.
So
MCP stands for Model Context Protocol for the browser, like you're showing on the screen here. We're hearing a lot of chatter on AI-enabled browsers these days. I think 2025 will be the AI browser here. This takes a bit of a different approach. So what they do is that they've developed a browser extension that allows you with very minimal setup at the website end to inject a little bit of JavaScript code, and then through that basically expose your API via the Model Context Protocol.
And your API is the website content, or
the website? It can be website content, can be backend servers. You decide a bit.
Okay.
And how it works is that you need to install this. I think it's a Chrome extension. I think they only have support for Chrome at the moment. Okay. And then your MCP clients, like Claude for your desktop or ChatGPT for your desktop, or your coding, whatever, they can they can use this MCP server in your browser, which is basically this extension, to leverage these functions from your website directly. So instead of having to, what most AI-enabled browsers take is this approach where you have this more of an RPA setup, this robotic process automation, where you basically have to simulate interactions with your browser. You need to scroll down a page, you need to read the content, you need to click buttons, etc.
It's like the Puppeteer or the Playwright,
exactly,
like headless browsers, right? Yes.
Indeed, yeah, indeed. And here they basically through this extension, you have this proxy directly to the functions. So your website becomes basically this Model Context MCP server that you can then directly interact with, which arguably is a smoother integration, but you need to do extra work to enable it.
Yeah, indeed. So for example, Wikipedia is also a static website. So now you need to have something that listens to MCP calls. Maybe it's going to be a more complicated setup. Maybe it's going to be more expensive as well. But then you don't have this clunky automation, and everything's in one place as well.
It's centralized how you expose the functions indeed. Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you didn't want to do this, you have to have your website and create an MCP server, like an external MCP server, and try to publish it somewhere so people can find it and try to integrate it. Right?
Indeed, yeah. Difficult thing of this, of course, is that it's still you need to have this extension installed. While with let's say if you would use a sort of a headless browser approach to basically go through your web page, simulate like you don't even have to have a browser visible.
Yeah, indeed. And I'm also wondering, there are some people that don't want to expose things, like even APIs, right? Doesn't need to be MCPs. So I think browser is like the only safe way, quote unquote, that you always will get the content, right? Because some people are not going to implement this because they don't want to. Some people are not because they're behind, quote unquote. So yeah, but I think it's a nice idea as well.
It's a nice idea. I think the difficult thing, and I think this is also that's why they pitch this as a USB-C for AI, like with a bit of this universal protocol to do these things, this interaction with the browser, but at the same time to actually start using this, like everybody that needs to start using this. So it's a very big gap to fill to make it actually be usable.
Right? Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. If you have a standard and no one adopts, then what's the point, right?
And the standard today is like manual interaction with websites, whether it's a human or a bot, right? But it's a manual interaction.
That's true. Yeah, and I think it makes sense as well. Again, I think it's trying to solve that pain, like you mentioned. People are using the headless browser to say, click here, do this, do that. But yeah, it's nice. Even though I coded a bit with like Playwright because I wanted to automate some clicks and stuff, and it feels a bit magical, you know. Like you put the MCP server, and then you can kind of watch, right? You can show me the screen, and you can use it like typing and stuff. Well, it's like a little dude right there, you know, doing stuff for me. So yeah, cool. Have you tried this, or you know any website that actually implement this?
No, I haven't tried it yet.
It's probably too soon as well, right?
It's early, yeah.
Very cool.
But related to this is OpenAI, because it's reportedly cooking up a Chromium-based browser with a built-in operator agent that can, for example, book tables or fill forms for you. And I quote, OpenAI is planning to launch an AI web browser in the coming weeks, teeing up a fresh duel with Chrome and Comet. So this is really directly in browser wars news. This is not an MCP extension. There are rumors that have not been formally confirmed that in the coming weeks, OpenAI will come with a browser, their own version, which I guess makes sense. What do you think, Milo?
I mean, I think it makes, I don't know. I feel like OpenAI is trying to branch off a bit from the AI provider only, you know. I think we did talk about last week about the consulting business. Now browsers, they also were in conversations to acquire IDEs. I think if you think like that, then I think it makes sense. A browser for AI, if it's not mcp-b or something like that, I'm not sure. Well, maybe it's probably like automations. You can talk to the website, right? Like you can open a site pane and say, what is here, or book something for me, or do something like that. Yeah, I can see things like that, yeah.
So the chatter that there is on this is that they will have their operator agent, which is basically a smart agent that can do stuff for you, like, for example, booking tables, very tightly integrated into this. So it will be able to very robustly simulate interaction with websites. What I also understand is like it will probably have next to your website, you'll have this chat interface. And why I think it makes sense is if I just look at my own ChatGPT usage, like often data actually comes from the World Wide Web that I use. And behind the screens, are being crawled, whatever, the research is being done. But probably when you have this side by side, you can say, stop, but also follow that link. I have these 3 tabs open. Make sure to keep that in mind when you research this topic. I think it's a very, like the World Wide Web is a very logical source of data for probably like at least 50% of what you do typically during a more extensive ChatGPT session. So I think there it makes sense to have this integration be smoother, but also have the user closer to that.
Yeah, that's true. I do think you solve a big chunk of problems that people probably have by being on the browser. Yeah, like you said, if you have different tabs, you can manage the tabs, you can manage the context. So I think it could be very interesting. I wonder, because there are other projects for this as well. There's one I heard, Navarro or something. There is Google actually announced this a while ago, like that it had a project Mariner, I want to say. I mean, you also talked about an AI browser, but you also said you tried
Comet from Perplexity.
Comet for Perplexity, indeed. So, but actually, the thing, as I'm saying these things as well, I have the impression that none of them really stuck. So, which makes me think that it's actually a harder problem that I'm making it right now. So I'm curious to see what's going to come up with OpenAI, right? I think so. Yeah,
I think the advantage that they have is that they have the model. A lot of people already, like if you have a ChatGPT license, you will probably be able to use all the power in the browser, and like they will also be able to optimize the integration with regards to their own model. So I think you will have good performance out of the box, and you already have a willingness to pay because you're already paying for ChatGPT. Like you have a lot of these browsers where you need to bring your own key. It's much more complex. Like you think about the extra cost, and
you need to be also a bit more developer-y, right? But you know, what API keys? What is this? How do I get it? I just want to use it. But do you think they would just add it as a? Do you think you need to pay for it additionally, or do you think they would just?
I doubt it. Well, we'll see, right? It's not even formally confirmed that there will be a browser, but I doubt it. I think it will be part of the ChatGPT Pro license. I think that makes sense adoption-wise, especially because like the data that people will generate just by interacting with this will also be valuable for future model training, right? It's not just an extra feature, it's also a new source of data.
Yeah, that's true. But then
I think what you will see a bit is that OpenAI is not only pushing for improving models, also like pushing the whole agentic ecosystem, and this is like getting a step closer to like OS level automation. This is not operating system level, but we're very close to like having very good automation of the browser from the moment that you actually have a browser.
Yeah, that's true. And if you think like that, like you're closer to the clicks, right? You see more the environment. Yeah. And I think when you think like that, it makes a lot of sense that they were interested in the IDE, right? Because it's a bit the same. Like you're closer to the action, let's say.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Another discussion, but it's maybe not one to have here, is privacy, of course.
That's what I was thinking as well. Because they're collecting this data to train. The simple example for agents, and even the agent-to-agent protocol was like booking stuff. Right? Like you want to plan a trip. So it's like one agent plans the trip, one agent buys the tickets, one agent books the hotel. And I can see if you have something like this, maybe it simplifies a bit because you can just have multiple tabs and then the agent has context with all the tabs and you can kind of bounce between one and the other. But then, yeah, if you have like personal information and financial information, if they're going to be like it's way more sensitive, right?
Yeah, I fully agree. Although what we've seen in the last years is that data privacy is not very much a high priority, and I doubt it's a high priority like it's the 90% level of the users of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I fear that true data privacy is only a concern of the people that really understand the technology and understand the potential implications, which is not a lot of people. Like if you look at the general populations who uses ChatGPT or browses the internet, right?
Yeah, I think it will be like that until something happens to enough people that it catches enough attention and it becomes more mainstream, right? But yeah, indeed, I don't see a lot of people really concerned about it, even like having a second thought. Even people that are more knowledgeable, quote unquote, So I think it's not even just like about the know-how, but I also think people need to maybe train the muscle of having a reflex of, but this is private data, so you shouldn't use this. Maybe I should use that, or maybe I shouldn't, So yeah. Let's see. Hope I'm wrong. I hope nothing bad happens. But I think the easiest example I can think of is like you're on, I don't know, ChatGPT, and you ask, "Oh, give me the credit card information from someone," and then it's like, "Yeah, there you go," Or
yeah.
Exactly. Or like you're typing code, and then the autocomplete just fills in like keys and stuff and credit cards. So, yeah, that's the fear. That's the fear. And
so, what else do we have?
What else? Swiss researchers will release an entirely open supercomputer-trained LLM fluent in more than 1,000 languages later this summer. Project lead Emmanuel Schlag says, and I quote, "Fully open models enable high-trust applications and are necessary for advancing research about risks and opportunities of AI."
So this is a new LLM that will be released somewhere later this year. Late summer is stated to release. It's a collaboration between ETH Zurich, University of Zurich, and EPFL, which is the University of Lausanne, both Swiss universities. They are using a Swiss supercomputer called ALPS to train a new LLM on, basically. It will be open source. It will be Apache 2 licensed. It will have fully open weights. The data will be documented, if I understand correctly. I don't think it will be available. It will be trained on more or less 10,000 GPUs. Oh, wow. If I understand correctly, they are using the Hopper H100s from NVIDIA. It will be fluent in 1,000 languages.
And you said it will be? It will be, but like, I'm assuming that it's already at least partially trained or fully trained?
I assume it's in the process of training, yeah, because there's also quite some information available. There will be two versions of the model. One will be an 8 billion parameter. The other one, the large one, will be a 70 billion parameter. So it's a very a wide type of user needs / base that it could potentially serve. It's also the idea of this is also to have a more sovereign model, right? Someone like a model that, at least from a Swiss point of view, is fully independent. And the researchers, like, they also argue that it's key to have this kind of model, this kind of sovereign model for like high trust applications, and also to be able to be compliant with the European AI Act. So it's will be interesting to see the performance of this model.
And maybe now, if we had to put this next to Llama, so Llama is also maybe one difference is that it's less open, maybe, because I know Llama, you can use it, but I think the license is a bit different and the data is not well documented. Like, you don't have it's like you can use it and it's the closest thing to open source, but I guess this takes another step further.
This takes another step further. This license is actually Apache 2. It's an actual open source compatible license. And a much more open nature, because the data will be like the whole. If I understand correctly, like they want to they want to document the whole process of training the model so that you could potentially replicate it.
Yeah. And I guess maybe it's like you mentioned the languages, so I guess that's also a focus. You'll probably be more proficient in more languages. Anything else as well? Any other differences that we can highlight between what we already have and know, which is Llama, and this?
Not really. I think we need to wait and see a little bit. I think the interesting thing is that I think it's at this point one of the only serious attempts at this. Like, there have been a few documented attempts also from, let's say, local governments to build smaller LLMs. Like, this is something that should compete with the larger ones out there, right? I think it will be difficult to do, to be honest, and it will be interesting to see where it lands on the benchmarks. But if we have something that is at least GPT-4 or maybe even 4.0, like at that level of performance, I think that would be very strong. I think what we see here is that the way to build these models, train these models, like, it's still very much an expert task, but it's something that is reproducible as long as you have the compute power and you have the data. I think that is a good thing. That I think that part of being competitive in the landscape has become, like, quote unquote easy enough to enter the domain, but then you still need a lot of data, a lot of compute to be able to really compete. But I think, like, the at the same time, like, something like this, which is a national model, you could maybe call it, right? Like, it's coming from out of Swiss. It's maybe, if the performance is good enough for the task that they have in mind, like if it's for government automation, these kind of things, like, it doesn't need to compete with the top out there, right?
True. Yeah, I think it's I think even if the model is not as good, but I think even just documenting the things, there's always a lot of pluses there, right? Showing the data, showing this, like, sharing a bit how they did it and how far they went. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. I also feel like maybe there's a big difference on the data, right? I guess if they're really disclosing all the data, it's probably more quote unquote ethical, right? Like, they're probably a bit more respecting as well, so it may have an impact on the model. And maybe how big of an impact, right? I think it'll also be interesting to see. So I think it's cool. I also like to see more initiatives like this, in Europe, right? And not just in the US.
So this is also, by the way, not a reasoning model, or there is not much information on it. Like, I don't think it will be a reasoning model. And in that context, we actually have, on non-reasoning models, we have some more open source news. Because we have Moonshot's Kimi K2. So Kimi K2 is a quote-unquote open source model. It's more or less beats Claude on coding, though it needs GPU class muscle to run. One user enthuses, I quote, "I tried Kimi on a few coding problems that Claude was spinning on. It's very good." And it sparked a bit of a debate over at Hacker News on speed, cost, and local deployment. So Kimi K2, like the Swiss model, is a non-reasoning model. It is more or less open source. It has an MIT license, but there is a limitation on the amount of users you can serve it for, which is still a lot of users. And if I understand correctly, the MIT license, even with the adjustments, is still open source compatible. It's a mixture of experts model. Its performance is very good. Like, it's a bit like DeepSeek V3 levels, GPT 4.1 levels. It's just below Claude 4 Sonnet, which is today a bit the benchmark for coding, I guess. And it's a bit out of the blue. There was not a lot of fanfare around it. But we do have this open model that everybody could potentially download, but you need a very, very hefty system to actually run it on. It comes from Moonshot, a Chinese company, where we still see that like China is still very much in the game of competing, also in this open space, right? Not just in the proprietary space, but also in this open space.
And you said, no, you need GPU muscle. So it's very similar to Cloud and Performance for coding, but it's open and it's faster as well. That's what I understood.
And it's similar to Claude for Sonnet in coding, which is very good. The rumors are that the Moonshot, the company behind Kimi, is also now building a reasoning model, training a reasoning model, starting from the Kimi K2 model. Something, but maybe we need to dig deeper in this another point at the time. But they used a very specific optimizer to train their model, which was a bit, people didn't think it would scale this well, but apparently it scaled very well. Also on that topic, like it's a very new type of optimizing your training runs. There is still very little known. Today, the only thing we have is a blog post. We would assume that there is a research paper coming out. But it's interesting to keep an eye on Moonshot and Kimi and what it will mean to the space. And it's good to see all these more open initiatives, because basically, even if you don't use the model, like the expertise on how to build and train these models becomes more of a public good, right?
Indeed. I think the hope, at least, is that it moves the whole community forward, right? Like people can exchange notes and it levels a bit the playing field as well. Exactly. I mean, levels a bit. I mean, you still need a lot of resources, right? So it's not like anyone can just have their own LLMs, but it's one less hurdle, let's say, right? So yeah. And Kimi, actually, they have been, I think Kimi's, for me, it's not a unusual name. Like when it comes up, so yeah, I remember Kimi, but I think his general public doesn't know, right? I think that's the difference between that and DeepSeek, right? I think for us, like we both hear them, we both know that they're up to something, but if you get out of the developer community, or even like the developer community, but as someone that's not following up the AI stuff as much, it's a bit unknown. So good to see. Again, very curious. Actually, Kimi K2, have you ever used it on like any for coding, like on the IDE, like Cursor, Copilot? They don't offer these ones, huh? Because sometimes I think I've seen DeepSeek, but I've never seen Kimi actually.
I think you can, at least via OpenRouter. I think OpenRouter gives access to it.
But the OpenRouter is something you need to plug into your VS Code, no?
OpenRouter basically is a proxy. So if you have something like a Klein or whatever, you can use OpenRouter quote unquote as a model, but by parameterizing that model, you basically choose an underlying model. You can say I want to use GPT 4.1 or Claude or Kimi.
I see. Okay, very cool. Maybe
it's actually, I just quickly checked, it's actually on there on OpenRouter. It's actually quite cheap as well. It's 0.55 cents per million input tokens, which is, if you compare it to the more proprietary models out there, is very cheap.
Indeed. The only limitation then, like if you're using with your IDE, is that you don't have the tab completions, right? Like it doesn't show code, like completions with your code, right? It's more for the chat.
Yeah, exactly. For the chat interface. Well, you can generate code, of course, but you.
Yeah, but it's not like you're typing and then it completes for you. Like, yeah. Cool. A lot of new models as well, right? This week, we also had news from XAI. Musk rolled out Grok 4 and a pricey Super Grok Heavy tier, touting multi-agent reasoning and the steepest AI sub yet. During the stream, he bragged, and I quote, "With respect to academic questions, Grok 4 is better than PhD level in every subject, no exceptions, even as the Pentagon signed a $200 million Grok contract."
Yeah, so a lot of information in those two sentences. So we have XAI releasing a new and very good model called Grok 4. XAI also released a new pricing tier, $300. We also have a lot of controversy in the last days around around Grok on X, and apparently we have government agencies signing contracts to get Grok capabilities. If you look at the Grok 4 on most benchmarks, like you can go, for example, to artificialanalysis.ai, like it is actually very, very good. It is topping most of the charts today. So there's not much that you can say, well, it's really top performing. If you listen a bit on community feedback, even though it's topping the benchmarks, it's not necessarily better at, for example, coding than Anthropic's models are. It's not necessarily better at reasoning than OpenAI's models are, but apparently it's very good at understanding more quote-unquote real-time data streams, which I guess is also because of the data it has access to on X, and also because how it's used on X. Like there's a lot of interaction with Grok itself on X, but the result is that it's a very good model.
Indeed.
The whole controversy, but maybe we shouldn't go too much into that, is that it's reportedly a very quote-unquote anti-woke model. It shows some Nazi traits every now and then.
Yes, I remember hearing something about that as well. But it was about Grok 4. It was about
yeah. There was apparently Grok 4 said to someone that interacted that it was Mecha Hitler and a whole lot of other things. And in the end, I think it was yesterday that also XAI issued a formal apology for the responses.
Like a whoopsie.
But it's a bit worrisome. I think the thing is that we need to make a distinction between is if we use it purely as an LLM, that is different than interacting with it on X, right? Like on X, it has like probably a lot of different instructions. People that have tried to reverse engineer the system problem on X, like also find if you need to respond to a user, first see if Elon Musk said anything about this topic and then take that as the truth. Like you're literally these type of things. So there's a lot of controversy around it. For now, I also tend to stay away from it myself.
Yeah, I also don't use it as much because of the controversy. Indeed,
that is I think the most important one. But and also the second is like up until today, even though it's a very good model, like I mainly use these LMs like in high volume for coding. Yeah, and it's not necessarily better at coding than other models today.
Yeah, I think the things that I use LLMs for that is not coding, usually they're pretty good. I mean, if you're just really getting information to an answer or something, I think the only difference actually for me is if I want to write something, I like Gemini better actually for like draft text or something. The way that it forms the sentences appeals more to me, which also could be just a stylistic choice. But I think aside from that, in terms of getting information and all these things, they're all quote unquote good enough for me. I don't feel that big of a difference.
Yeah. We also have this new price tag, which is $300 a month for the Pro.
How much was the OpenAI actually? It was 200, no?
It's 200, yeah. I think Anthropics is also 200, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's out there. I think for the people that are very heavy users, it still makes sense. I think for, let's say, the Anthropic one, for me, it makes sense to go for the 200 one. And I think people think of this as very expensive. I think a bit like, in the end, it's like per year, it's the cost of a laptop, something like that, right?
Yeah.
If you use this 8 hours a day constantly, and because of this 200 euros, you don't reach your limits or whatever, like it's potentially worth it, right?
I think there is a case to be made, but I also think that most people are not there yet. I mean, I think most people don't use it as much, or they don't leverage as much. But I think when you see the speed improvements that you get and all these things, to say instead of, I mean, I'm thinking of a company now, right? Like instead of if you need to have a workload for 3 people, right? You can probably get that and more using these tools if you use it intensely, right? So I do think it can pay itself, but I think, yeah, with time it will be more commonplace. But yeah. Another thing that I saw as well from Grok 4 is that they had the Grok Heavy, and I glanced through it as well. What I understood is, again, if you have this Grok Heavy, if you have questions, they would actually launch what I think they called like a study group, kind of. So basically, they launch many agents in parallel to answer your question, and then they kind of pull the answers together. And I even saw something that was like, every answer needs to be fact-checked before. So to try to combat a bit the hallucinations and all these things. But here it says to consider multiple hypotheses at once, Grok for heavy. And I think for this, you need to have the price here.
Okay. Oh.
So yeah, so they have like thoughts and stuff, and the idea is like they try to actually fact check everything, so everything is legit. But yeah, curious to see again, like how I do think that could bring a big improvement, but waiting to see a bit.
Another thing, like they introduced this on a live stream, something that Elon Musk was saying is that they are either actively at this moment or will soon train a video model, a video generation model. They have, I think, I don't know how much they will actually use, but this is a bit braggadocio, but they have access to 100,000 G200s that Elon is saying that they will train a video model on. Earlier state-of-the-art video models have been trained on orders of magnitude smaller than that, let's say 10,000 GPUs, something like that. So if they actually do this, it will be very interesting to see what kind of video model we get out of this, especially seeing the very, very, very quick improvements in video models in the recent year.
Yeah, I think video models are really cool, and I think they have a lot of potential. And I think it will change in the near future. But I also feel like they don't have a very big financial return yet. I think so far it feels more like it's for fun. But I think with the investments and the improvements we see, I think there will be more cases there.
I think you need to be really in the field to understand returns today. I think if you just look at the advertisement on TikTok or on Instagram, or I think you already see a lot of AI generated video material.
Actually, that is true on TikTok, yeah, or not TikTok. I saw on YouTube Shorts, like it was clearly actually even one podcast. Wow, it's a bit diverging. I even think I clicked on a podcast that I'm pretty sure it was the Notebook LM. Pretty sure.
Maybe we are as well.
Yeah, we are as well. I hope not. I hope the AI can do better.
Maybe we reached AGI 10 years ago, and this is just a Notebook LLM on when will we get to AGI?
If we were, it would be super meta. Yeah, there is some content there. And I also think, financial returns, because I know these, if you want to generate a clip of X or Y, it can be super expensive, like if you send it to an agency, right? So I think there is a big potential there. But yeah, cool.
Maybe the final news on Grok is that they also see yesterday, actually a tweet by an ex by Elon Musk, is that they rolled out Grok Companions, which is this 3D AI avatar friend-ish thing that the paid subscribers of Grok now have access to, which looks a bit like character AI, like your virtual friend. It's a bit worrisome. At the same time, like how they position themselves. So there's one Reddit user here who tried it, and he asked, "What's your name?" And she looks a bit like an anime girl. She said, "Hey cutie, I'm Annie, your crazy in love girlfriend who makes your heart skip." That was the first interaction.
Oh my god!
With a random Grok companion. So that's now a thing.
just looking for friendship. It's fine.
So if that's your thing, maybe you should consider the $300.
I don't know. Yeah, it's another step towards her. The movie. It's like a big step actually. Wow. I won't be trying that soon, but interesting to hear. What else do we have?
We have OpenAI's 3 billion bid, a bit that we often discussed. OpenAI's $3 billion bid collapsed, freeing Google to poach Windsurf's leader, while Cognition raced in days later to buy the remaining startup. I quote, OpenAI's deal to buy Windsurf is off, and Google will instead hire Windsurf's CEO Varun Mohan, The Verge reports, igniting a three-way tug-of-war for agentic coding talent. I don't know what happened exactly. A few months ago, it was announced that OpenAI would acquire Windsurf for $3 billion.
Yes, lots of money.
Lots of money for a startup that was, I think at that point, 2 years old. Something like that. Apparently now the bid is off. Windsurf CEO is hired by Google, will move to Google's team. And the company behind Devin is like your AI software engineer, the company behind it. It's called, do you remember the name of it all?
The name of the company?
Yeah, behind Devin.
Cognition.
Cognition, thank you. Cognition is basically acquiring all the whole Windsurf idea, the Windsurf company, without the CEO then.
Indeed. I also heard that the CEO, he was hired by Google, but he had like a lot of money was always involved in this on his move to Google. Don't remember how much, but yeah, it was a lot of money. It was a lot of money. So here, announcement after just days, Google's hired away Windsurf CEO, co-founder Douglas Chen, and research leaders in a 2.4 billion reverse equity hire. So lots of money, yeah. And what I was also checking here, so apparently OpenAI had some time to close the deal, let's say, but then the OpenAI's $3 billion offer to acquire Windsurf expired, and just a few hours later, Google already hired the CEO. So it was very quick moving, quick actions there. Exactly. Felt like a coup, and then Cognition, now the maker of AI coding agent Devin, acquires Windsurf. So
which is still a big company. So the Cognition, it's still 200 plus employees that are part of the company, even though a part of the core team left to Google.
Yes, indeed. I think Cognition as well, Devin, I just remembered of Devin. There was a lot of noise, but I felt like it didn't really catch on. It was like Devin was for people that are not in the loop, let's say, it was the first full AI developer that should be able to even close tickets and do these things. They had demos. And I remember at the time, and I think this was maybe a year ago, maybe a bit more. But at the time, there was a lot of the chatter of software engineering is dead. Now it's all this, and people are not going to pay. And again, I think that's not the case today. I think there are companies laying off people saying they're going to replace with AI, but it's not in the Devin-esque style. I think it's a different way. And I think like things like Devin, like it really raised the expectations and the bar. So I think coding agents and all these things, they're super, super, super impactful. But because it's not at Devin, I think people they got a bit disillusioned, right? But
yeah, indeed. Yeah, it would be interesting to understand like why OpenAI let the offer expire, right?
Exactly.
Like if you look at Windsurf, their reported annual recurring revenue is 82 million, which is a lot, but it's a fraction versus the multiple that is versus the valuation. Like it's a valuation of 3 billion, which is crazy. Yeah. And I think also like what we've seen also in the last 2 weeks, I want to say, is like the whole Claude/Anthropic drama. Because like everybody, like if you're using Windsurf or if you're using Cursor or if you're using whatever, there's a very, very, very good chance that under the hood you're using Claude Sonnet models because they are today the best at coding.
Yeah.
And what Anthropic recently did is that they very much upped their pricing for these models, having meant that Cursor had to up their monthly subscription price. I'm not sure if Windsurf also upped their monthly subscription price, but if they did not, they saw their margins evaporate. I think it's a move from Anthropic to basically close down the competitor ecosystem and let them focus on Claude Code. But it also shows like how fragile these things are because Windsurf and Cursor at the end, like they're IDEs, but they're just a sort of an IDE wrapper around LLM endpoints. And you're very dependent on the best endpoint, unless you have your own.
Yeah, but do you think, because to me, again, I agree with everything you said. And then to me, it would make more sense that Anthropic is very interesting in buying Windsurf or the other things. Because Anthropic felt like they were more developer focused, let's say. But actually, Anthropic has been very quiet on this IDE.
Well, they released their CLI, right?
Claude Code. And I actually tried Claude Code since we last chatted. So now I'm a vibe coder. Hi, my name is Marilla. I'm a vibe coder.
It's a term we don't use anymore, Marilla.
But what's the term now? Because I feel like every time I say it, I feel a bit old.
This is just coding.
It's just coding.
We're now July 2025. Coding is just this.
But then I feel like if I just say coding, I feel like I'm being dishonest,
But this is the new reality. When you're coding, you're using AI assisted tooling.
Yeah, but like it is the next level. Huh? Like I see, for example, I use Claude Code. I spent, I don't know, maybe 6 hours in total, right? And really not even paying attention. Like I was doing other things. And the amount of code it generates, a lot of the stuff you figured out, stuff that like I would figure out eventually, like how to integrate Slack and how to do this and how to use small agents and add tools and all that. Things that I would figure it out, but the amount of stuff that it did, if I just tell someone like, oh yeah, I just coded this in 6 hours, I did all this, everyone's gonna like, even it's
That's
different.
what life is now.
But it's even different from just using the IDE and just like chatting with it, right? Like it's another level to it.
It's a new normal, Murilo. Like when before all this AI stuff, like when you were coding and you said, I just coded this, it's also not that you just created all the punch cards and right? I mean, it's a constant evolution. It's just a very fast evolution.
Okay. I think it's
coding.
But I feel like the thing is,
and if you want to nuance it a bit, it's AI assisted coding. To me, vibe coding the term is passé.
I think, yeah, vibe coding, I feel like the thing that is bad to me, about
vibe coding, like there's this notion to vibe coding is that there's people doing this without any knowledge of coding best practices, and that they create a prototype that is very far from usable.
Yeah, I think
to me that is that very quickly has become like the connotation around vibe coding.
I feel
like
it's
not a fair one. I think.
I fully agree. It's not a fair one. I think it's. I think people when say vibe coding, they say it's not, like they think it's not serious, right? Either because you don't know, or because this is just a throwaway script, or because you're not serious. Which again, I also don't think that's true. But it is a very different experience, right? It's not really an IDE. Sometimes you still want to open a bit like the actual IDE. I mean, at least that's what I did, to actually kind of get a feel for how the code is, to kind of understand. There are a few things that I'm a bit more opinionated. Okay, don't do this, do that. Don't use dictionaries, use data classes so you can have type hints. So I just had the thing running, and then I opened, I was like, it's actually returning a lot of dictionaries. So I just sent another prompt, submit it kind of queues it up. So the Claude Code is really powerful. I really enjoy it, but I feel like it's still, maybe there's still something there, to really bring the whole experience together, which maybe actually brings nicely to the next topic, which is Cairo, not sure. But Keto debuts a spec-driven agentic IDE that shepherds code from first prompt to deployment with auto-generated tasks and hooks. And I quote, "I'm excited to announce Keto, an IDE that helps you deliver from concept to production through a simplified developer experience working with AI agents." The team writes. Actually, you came across this, but I didn't really look that much into it. I saw this diagram here for people that are just listening. On the left, you have the flow of vibe coding, and on the right, you have the clarity of specs, and then you have the Keto logo right in the middle of it, which is a cute ghost.
So, spec-driven agentic IDE, yet another IDE. It comes actually from Amazon. It's built on open source OSS code, which is the open source version of Visual Code. And what it does is that it basically formalizes a bit more the process around AI-assisted coding. So you start with a prompt, you generate a requirements document out of that. From that requirements document, you go to a technical specifications document, and it builds like within your IDE, you have the structure to actually like visualize this, to structure this. And then from those technical requirements, you also generate tasks. And then you have a number of utility functions, like you have sort of hooks, like if you save a file, it automatically runs all the tests against a test suite, etc. Like also probably verifying, I don't know, I haven't tried it yet with an LLM, like this test output, does it cover everything that we also defined in the tasks? It's interesting. I think it builds a lot on the learnings of the quote-unquote vibe coding community, where we've already seen a lot. And I think it's actually Klein, CLI and E, that pioneered this, where they called it a knowledge base, where you have in their setup, they had basically markdown files. You had a very big system prompt where you say, have these and these markdown files, make sure to generate these content, or ask the user about this content, and basically ended up with, here are your requirements, here is your technical architecture, this is the task list. And what we've seen over time is that a lot of these AI assisted coding IDEs, like they've implemented something similar. I think this is the first time that we see like it's formalized in the IDE.
Yeah,
which is probably a good thing, right? Like it brings a bit of structure, brings a bit of guardrails to building something.
I think so too. But even Cloud Code, they also have I don't know if they actually write it on files, but a lot of times when you prompt something, it says, okay, these are updated to-dos, and they have like a to-do list, and they say, okay, do this. A lot, they're basically breaking down your request into many steps that they can actually...
Well, I think what you're referring to now is like intermediary steps. Indeed, like Claude Code also uses this intermediary, like a bit behind the scenes, like you give it a prompt and like you see that it generates a task list, and it's like one by one works over these tasks, and you end up with a final result. But this is more at a global / project level that it.
Which is also something I've started to do more, which I also think it's very useful. I think it's also useful for me personally, because I am inclined to just kind of like get started, like let's just move forward. But sometimes even just having a little AI agent just to, hey, Chris, critique my plan a bit, or critique what I want to do. And then they're just like, okay, but you want to do this or you want to do that? And I think it's a nice balance between not overthinking every detail, but like the big things, I think the LLM will catch most of the time, at least. Did you consider this or did you consider that? Do you want to grow your application or not? So you don't really shoot yourself in the foot. I think it's it's been a nice balance.
I think the only potential downside is that and I've seen this happen with Klein, is that you, like, instead of focusing on the creative aspect, like you have suddenly a lot of AI generated documentation that you hope that this LLM is keeping up to date with. In reality, it's only like 80% kept up to date. So you also suddenly have this AI generated documentation that becomes a concern. So that's, I think, like a fine balance to strike between more structure, which I think everybody agrees is a good thing in AI generated coding, to like, where does the structure become like yet another form of documentation and administration?
Yeah. I think another thing that I noticed, so not just creating a lot of documentation, but I think for me as well, I noticed that like when I'm trying to correct a bit the LLM, do this instead of that, it's very easy for it to just kind of create more files, create more code, create more this. So sometimes I have to be like, hey, actually take a step back, remove the stuff that you're not using. We only should have one way of doing these things. Don't have 5 different things, which is also something to adjust. I like you need to be mindful of the model and whatnot.
Okay. So we have something from the EU.
Yes.
Brussels' Protect EU roadmap sketches data retention, interception, and decryption plans that could force encrypted services open within 5 years. TechRadar warns, quote, EU law enforcement bodies could be capable of decrypting your private data by 2030, stirring immediate privacy backlash. What is this about?
Yes. Basically, there was a new plan that was unveiled called Protect EU strategy. It's for basically the authorities, right, to be able to investigate these things. And the roadmap, they were saying that the first thing is to look into how we can decrypt data. So for example, maybe to touch a bit more on the plan. The plan focuses on 6 key areas: data retention, lawful interception, digital forensics, decryption, standardization, and AI solutions for law enforcement. And I think the most troublesome, let's say, is encryption or decryption, right? Mm-hmm. Next year, the EU Commission set to present a technology roadmap on encryption to identify, evaluate decrypting solutions. So basically, I think it's a bit, I don't have a formed opinion on this, let's say, because I think data privacy is very important. But like, also, if you say this is a matter of safety and security of people, should have an exception or not? And even if you say, yes, you should have an exception, then who are you trusting to make these calls? What is actually safety critical, or what are the things that people are just abusing the power that they have, quote unquote? And I think a lot of the people that were saying about decryption is that it's also very concerning, because if they really start making progress on decryption, they will also motivate a lot of people that are ill-intended, right? It's not even about making this available, but if someone hears, actually the Protect EU, they found a way to decrypt data, it also brings a lot of attention. And a lot of people that have the know-how, and I think they mentioned here, people that have the know-how and the motivation to do such a things, they may be attracted to this as well, right? And there's a whole bunch of bad things that can happen, like bad actors, right? And then in the end, they also mentioned like how for I think in the US as well, they actually say the encryption is not, encrypting data doesn't undermine safety, but it actually enforces it. So to really try to go against encryption is also taking a few steps back. That's the argument as well. And apparently I didn't know, some people were saying that there was not a bill called chat control, and this is just a different iteration of it. So I wasn't as much aware in this, but I think you has always been very big on data protection, data rights, and all these things. And this caught my attention. Had you ever heard of anything like this coming from the EU?
No, not that this was a EU level, that this was an EU level project, that there are efforts going into decryption by law enforcement agencies, I think, is unknown. We've in the past, I've worked with a few where this is very much a thing, and I think it's done for good purposes to really research, understand criminal networks.
Yeah.
I understand these two points of view. You have more the data privacy point of view. You also understand this from a law enforcement point of view, where you used to have, like back in the day, we used to listen in on telephone calls to understand criminal activity, criminal networks, criminal communication. Let's assume let's assume that the government is a good actor in this, and that we do not want this criminal activity to happen. Then you need to be able to do these kind of things, right? Because you cannot knock the front door and say, "Can we please sit in the room and listen along?" You can't do that, right? So you need in 2025 these type of technologies. It's at the other side, it's a very slippery slope because where do you stop with decrypting, right? Because you can also argue, like, to capture criminal activity is very hard to focus it on a very specific entity because it's probably a network, so you need to monitor a bit broader, et cetera, and then it becomes a very slippery slope, and before you know it, you're monitoring your whole population. So yeah.
I also think that it's very people are very. I mean, because you mentioned like the analogy with the telephone listening, but I think that today we're way more digital, right? I think you expose way more of yourself to the internet.
True.
So that's also.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
It is sensitive, but and what about the argument of decryption, that even if there are plans to decrypt data, that it could also attract bad actors? Do you see, or do you think it's because the argument is, if someone can crack decryption, then everyone knows it's possible, and then people with not such good intentions will also try to do it, and they will get there. I think that's the argument.
Which is probably true, right? Like everything that there is, where there is a less strong barrier, people will try to exploit.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but then I think it's a bit of a gloomy future, right? Because if that's the case, then decryption is not enough. Then you need to find something else, and then it's another can of worms, right?
True. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And what else do we have?
Our last topic for today.
Yes.
A very interesting one. Go for it, Marilla.
CloudFlare will now block AI crawlers by default, demanding payment before models feast on publisher content. The company says it, and I quote, would start blocking AI crawlers by default, drawing a line in the open web where content is no longer free fuel for AI.
Very interesting.
Indeed. So CloudFlare, this is difficult today, apparently powers 20% of the web, according to the company. And I also understand their point of view, because today the web is actually working differently, right? Before, if you were building a website, you wanted to attract clicks, and then you didn't mind that Google was using your data to ads and stuff, because they would also give you traffic, right? Nowadays, you need to maybe optimize your website for LLM crawlers, and Google still parses your data, but now Google has the summary when you Google something. True. So you don't actually get clicks on your website. So basically, before, it was more like a mutual relationship where like they benefited, but they also gave back. But nowadays, that's not the case, and I think that's what kind of CloudFlare is also alluding to. Basically, they want to block by default all the LLM crawlers, right? And they want to still make it available for the AI providers, but if they pay for it, basically, right?
Yeah, and it's very interesting. So it's something that they announced already last year. Today, their marketplace was released. I think CloudFlare is one of the very few players that could actually pull this off. So CloudFlare does a lot, but like they're sort of the middleman in between your website and your visitors. They do content delivery, DDoS protection. They act as a reverse proxy. They do a lot of things, but are like the number you were saying, 20%, like in 20% of the cases, they're already between someone's website and the visitors of those websites. So they already serve like a huge user base. And what they now do with the marketplace is that they allow website owners to say, if an AI crawler uses your website, how much should they pay for it? Which even from a point, even if you would ignore the paying part, like having the ability to block this by a party that is probably good enough to be able to detect is actually an AI crawler is already very strong, because I think you already had a few of these individual projects that try to block AI crawlers. It's more from a point of view where you're just against this kind of data usage. But here you can actually, if you say a very valuable data, like think about, for example, Wikipedia, that has to rely very much on donations to even exist, to if they ask the big AI crawlers of this world for a cent per page scrolled, like it's a very, very interesting new stream of revenue that suddenly exists and that never existed before.
Indeed. And actually, it's funny you mention even Wikipedia, because I think the first transformer models, the first LLM, they were just trained on Wikipedia. I think it was Wikipedia and books, right? Because Wikipedia was always very open, very easy to crawl and stuff. And I think we also talked, I don't know if we talked during the recording or after the recording, that Wikipedia is also struggling a bit to find money, right? To keep the website running, basically. So indeed, I think it could be a very interesting alternative. I also think it makes sense. So yeah, I feel like it's almost like before the internet, all these things were a bit like water. You can just kind of come and take it. And now they're saying like, wow.
Well, what I think will happen is only the websites that have very highly valuable data will actually do this, because there is also still very much an incentive to open up your website for SEO optimization on ChatGPT or on Claude or wherever. Because if you say, where can I find information about X, and you describe X on your website, you probably want ChatGPT to point to your website. And if you block them, they will not. So there's also like this balance. Do you have valuable enough data to actually ask to pay for it?
Yeah, I think yes. But I don't remember where I read. I don't know if it was here or it was another article that they were saying, it happens, but like they say, with OpenAI, it's 750 times harder to get traffic than it was with Google of old. For Anthropic, it's 30,000 times harder. And that's, I think, what they were also bringing up is like, there is an incentive to open it up, because maybe you get traffic from the LLMs. But according to this, at least, it's the proportions are very, very, very different, right? The incentives are way more diluted. So yeah, I think there's also just a matter of if you're putting something on the internet, you want to reach people, right? And there's a bit of, I don't know, spreading the word, or like getting, I don't know, if you're a blogger, you want to be known for this and that, you want to be known for having expertise on X and Y. I do think it makes a lot of sense. But I when I was reading this and I was reading the article and I was like listening as well to know how Google was powering websites and the trade-offs, and I must say it's not something that I had actively thought as much, but I think it is a big problem, and I think this maybe at least gives alternatives to people to do something about it. So I thought it was a nice change of the game, let's say.
Yeah, it's a revenue stream that was hard to imagine that it would exist a few years ago, right? It's also Indeed. That's the interesting thing about this whole AI evolution as well. It creates revenue streams where you didn't expect one to be. It also creates like jobs where you didn't expect. Like, for example, data labeling has never been as high in demand as it was until now, right?
Indeed. I think the even before the whole Gen AI, I remember AI, there was a lot of like, AI is gonna take away jobs, and it's very gloomy, it's very this. And the way I always looked at it is it will change. I think it's hard to know what kind of jobs it will create because we haven't undergone this, but the changes are not going to be just negative or just positive, right? I think they will be for both sides. I'm not saying they're going to be equally. I'm not saying they're going to be equally for both sides, but I do think it will just change things, right? And I think we need to wait and see how things would change.
I'm a little bit less optimistic on the equal part, but let's see how it goes.
No, I don't. I actually don't think it will be equal, but I think it will change. I think that's the only thing that we can say right now. I think it will change. I think there'll be things you're not gonna. But yeah, that's life. Huh?
That's life.
That's life. Alrighty.
That's it for this week.
That's it for this week, indeed. Lots of stuff. Anything you want to close on, Bart? Poem, haiku, inspirational words?
Not really. I'll think about it for next time. But thanks everybody for listening. Leave your reviews, leave your comments. We're wherever you listen to your podcast and on YouTube. We're very grateful for all the interaction in the last weeks there. We also actually recently opened a TikTok account where we're sharing some shorts there. So give us a comment wherever you are.
Indeed. Let us know. I think it helps us know that people are listening, people appreciate it, and helps us keep moving as well. So appreciate y'all. Thanks, Bart.
See you next time.
See you next time.